I'm Jim Check with Now Media, and we're back. I got Ian Burns back from his week-long holidays out there in Algonquin, and we're back with the really big show. We're going to kind of change the format a little bit. We talked about that. We're going to we're just going to do, not probably, we're going to do just the national, international, and BC news. We're going to leave the tech, the health, and the Are You Serious sections we're going to do weekly shows on those. We're trying to work on things. So we'd love to hear your feedback. If you have any feedback on what we're doing and how we're doing it. That's it. So no flights tonight. Air Canada drama continues. Reminds me of that song, This Flight Tonight. Big meetup at the White House. Ford wants lower taxes. Big day for Pierre Poilievre. Alberta declares carbon emissions as a non-pollutant. And Carney does not make the cut. All that and a lot more on the Really Big Show. And again, welcome back, Ian. How was the Algonquin?
It was very, very good. I think it's like classic. It's the Canada of the imagination. It's classic Canada, I would say. It's very nice.
And you're repping it. You're wearing the T-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. I couldn't resist. I like to buy a mug and I like to buy a T-shirt when I go to any sort of park. So there you go.
Well, if you go to Toronto, you can get mugged in the park.
Oh, they'll take your T-shirt.
Get mugged in the park.
Yeah.
There you go. Air Canada flight attendants to challenge that back to work. They were ordered back to work by Patty Hajdu, the Labour Minister, and the union said, no, thank you.
And they do have a point, really. They've said this. They're saying like it's just becoming ridiculous now. It's like we just can't strike. And I'm sure this is also connected to what happened or what is happening with Canada Post. But they're just saying kind of, well, what's the point of having a union then? If every time we strike, it's like not the right time and it's dangerous or whatever. So you can understand their frustration, but at the same time, Air Canada is, I mean, it's on the verge of being a failed company, isn't it? Massively subsidized over the years by us, by taxpayers.
Not a failure for the C-suite, though, raking in millions and millions of dollars. They publish some of those salaries there. I think it's just ridiculous, like I think tens of millions, like 10, 12 million, I think, for the CEO, and a lot of them in the C-suite, millions of dollars. Then people argue that, like Elon Musk and them shouldn't make the billions, but he's running a for-profit venture that doesn't rely on the government funding. So, all the more power to him. The more he makes, the more the shareholders make. But Air Canada has been dipping into yours and my pocket for a long time. And I don't understand how those CEOs and the C-suite make that much money there. But, the media...
I would say, Muskie boy, sorry, just to go back there, he does make a lot of his money from government contracts, doesn't he? But I guess it's different because he would say, I offer a service that nobody else in the world can provide. Whereas Air Canada, obviously, they haven't stumbled upon some new technology. They just fly planes. Like anybody could figure that out.
He doesn't go broke every week and then ask for more money. The Industrial Relations Board declares Air Canada flight attendants strike illegal, though. And they say the 10,000 flight attendants need to go back to work. Air Canada put out that piece when after Patty Hajdu said, that they had to go back to work. They put out a piece real quick saying, like flights will resume, and they backpedaled really quickly. We got a little clip here to play here. Let's play this clip here. This is the Air Canada striking.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
I mean, the public support for the striking flight attendants seems very much in support of them, although the media seems to be piling on the other way, though. The media seems to be piling on. We're going to play this clip here from CBC here. It might take a second. There's a clip there. Oh, we're not going to get it, I guess. But anyway, the union leader has said that he was supposed to order the flight attendants back to work, but he ripped it up in a display there. And that was what this clip that I thought we were going to have. But obviously, we don't have that clip, but that's fine. And then the media put out a story too, but Patty Hajdu said the minister would not substantiate the claim that a legal strike by 10,000 flight attendants threatens deliveries of life-saving medicine and organ tissue. I mean, that was put out there. Hajdu was previously cited for fabricating stories to justify the strike ban. Shipment of critical goods and as pharmaceuticals and organ tissue should continue to reach their destination, said Hajdu. The airline strike was about the safety of Canadians, she told reporters. This is simply unacceptable.
I mean, how easy is it to make an argument like this? They did this during COVID. Obviously, that's the most that is the most obvious recent example. But it's easy to do this about anything. You know, if you want to go and censor the internet because you don't like what people are saying on there,
you can find something
for political reasons. What do? You say we must protect the children. Children are dying, Jim. We have to protect the children. It's easy to do this kind of thing, and this is the argument of a simpleton. This is such a poor, garbage argument, isn't it? And surely by this point, we're used to it. You know, we're hardened to this kind of garbage from people in power who try and slip things past the public.
Yeah, this is the 8th strike ban in a year, though. Minister Hajdu on Saturday attempted to force flight attendants into binding arbitration just 3 hours into a lawful strike. It was the 8th time in a year, a record for any federal government, that Cabinet invoked Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code to ban legal picket. The clause permits Cabinet to take action or maintain or secure industrial peace and promote conditions favorable for the settlement of industrial disputes. There you go. Canadians have already sacrificed, she said, a lot in this uncertain economy, and this labor disruption is adding to the worries and financial burden. She said she absolutely rejects the notion that her government is anti-union. But get back to work. So 8, a record. That's it doesn't seem very supportive of unions, does it?
But this is also, I mean, what I was going to say, I mean, hilarious timing. I've just looked at our email and we've got a pitch has come in from some random people saying, survey reveals most Canadians have not had a pay rise since 2020 and wages are falling far behind the cost of living. That's exactly what I was going to say, which is, or something like that, which is pay is low, pay is not increasing, cost of living is increasing. It's not just flight attendants and Canada Post workers, it's everybody. You know, the economy in the last 10 or so years has been pretty poor. It hasn't performed well, certainly in terms of per capita and how much money people actually have in real terms rather than just the GDP. And I think this is the kind of thing that you should expect. And this is the kind of thing that happened in the 1970s all across the Western world in response to a really sort of messed up economy. When this happens, you get this kind of thing. And it's why the chief priority of any government should be to make sure that the economy is healthy and growing. And as you like to mention, and also Mark Carney likes to mention, that isn't really, it wasn't particularly a priority, was it, of the previous government, at least.
And then the reporter asked, why does your government continue to use Section 107? That's 8 times now. This is about industrial peace and safety of Canadians, Hajdu said, the Labour Minister. And the Labour Department in May 23 briefing notes under Section 107 referrals cautioned that the strike ban should be used sparingly. A decision to invoke Section 107 is not taken lightly, but they seem to like to use it. And here's somebody on, and always you get some good responses on the internet there. Here's one response from somebody. If Mark Carney and Patty Hajdu and the Liberal government think that flight attendants shouldn't be paid for their work when the planes aren't in the air, then parliamentarians shouldn't be paid unless Parliament is in session. I think that's good logic, no?
Well, yeah, I mean, it is a little bit ironic, isn't it? Being told to go back to work by people that never seem to do any work at all, just always have their feet up. And if they are working, chances are it's self-promotion of some variety, isn't it? Where they're trying to ensure that they get a better job or that they get re-elected or something like that.
Yeah, I talked to a friend of mine that has 2 friends that are flight attendants for Air Canada, and they said that they don't get paid until that cabin door is closed. So that seems odd. I mean, that's one of the things they're arguing against, right? I mean, sometimes you get trapped there at the dock forever. Why wouldn't you get paid? You're actually doing a service. You're greeting people. Like that seems ridiculous, doesn't it?
There are quite a lot of jobs like that, though, and it's not just flight attendants. It's like a lot of sort of personal care assistants or whatever you call them, where they have to go from house to house. They don't get paid for when they're driving sometimes. I mean, that's just one example. There are loads of examples like this. And it's all kind of part of what's happened in the last, I think, 30 or 40 years, we can say now, which is the squeezing of the worker, usually so that the big man, monopoly man, can make more profits.
Well, we have a quote here from Mark Carney here. As he was going to have a meeting with the Ontario Premier, Doug Ford, because he didn't get the invite to the big house. But let's play this clip here, and he talks at the end there. He talks a little bit about Air Canada.
Can we get an update on how trade talks are going? How are they going?
Good morning. Bonjour.
How are trade talks going?
Look, well, actually, I'm just going to meet with Minister LeBlanc. We'll have a discussion of that, and important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade, but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
Like what would some examples be?
Well, we'll talk about the housing sector. We'll talk about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence. What we're doing in terms of making Canada competitive.
What's your advice to President Zelensky regarding should he accept any deal?
I gave that advice yesterday in a meeting with President Zelensky and the coalition.
And what was it? What was it?
Do you have any comment on Air Canada, sir? Anything to say to Air Canada union workers?
I'll say the following. We recognize very much the critical role that flight attendants play in keeping Canadians and their families safe as they travel, comfortable as they travel. And it's important that they're compensated equitably at all times, fairly at all times. That's the reason why there have been negotiations over the course of the last 8 months. It is disappointing that those negotiations did not come to an agreement, and it was the judgment of both the union and the company that they were at an impasse. That's not my judgment, it's their judgment. And so we are in a situation where literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians and visitors to our country are being disrupted by this action. I urge both parties to resolve this as quickly as possible, and the Minister will have more to say. Minister Hyde will have more to say later.
Did the government make a mistake imposing binding arbitration on the weekend?
Not very much to say, eh? And constantly trying to walk away. It's a very bad look. If you contrast that with, because Doug Ford did the exact same thing in the same corridor, I think, and he like stood there, as he does, and he was just taking all the questions, chatting to everybody, almost like until the journalist got sick of asking questions, and then he walked away. And I just feel like you can say what you want about Doug Ford, a self-promoter and all the rest of it, but at least he's willing to look at journalists and speak to them, answer their questions.
Well, it's the same thing that we highlight all the time, that Trump will take question after question after question. And but Mark Carney, they're obviously visibly burned about the Zelensky question because he didn't get the invite to the big house today with the rest of the European Union leaders, because he said that Canada is the most European of all other countries that aren't European. And he was on the call there. Obviously, Canada doling out lots of cash to Zelensky, but no invite to the White House.
Doling out advice, apparently, but he doesn't want to tell us what that advice was.
Yeah. A big day for Pierre Poilievre. So he has that by-election that goes today there, and that's in the Battle River Crowfoot area. And I was just there, actually, while the election was, like where people were campaigning. I was there to visit the Tyrrell Museum there in Drumheller. Drumheller, part of the Battle River Crowfoot area. More than 200 candidates running that election, so you can write in the name because again, the Liberals obviously visibly attacking his bid to get reelected as the official opposition leader.
Well, everybody wants to attack him, don't they? I guess people have decided that he's an easy target. But I mean, on this occasion, I can't see him losing this, especially when you have to write the name. I mean, the whole point of that gigantic ballot is to just make life miserable for Pierre Poilievre voters, isn't it? And now it's not going to be the case because they're just going to write his name down, which I guess is still kind of annoying, but yeah.
Especially if you can't figure out how to spell Poilievre.
Yeah, that's something I am very interested in that. Like, will they accept?
They said they
variations
would.
of the spelling.
They said, as long as it looks close enough. So you were right there. They said they should have put a couple other P. Poilievre, you know, different Poilievres on the form there. I think you gave out that advice a while ago. We got a little clip here from Pierre as he faces his either. I mean, if he doesn't win this, then he's obviously done in the Conservative Party. But so this is a do or die moment, but it should be an empty net for him. But
yeah.
Focus on, yes, prosecuting the government. We did that very well. We ran Trudeau out of town. We defeated the carbon tax. But I think we also have to make sure that people see the strong government in waiting that we are. We know what to do in government. We need to make sure people see that, both in me and in our caucus team. And that will be the approach we take as we go into the fall session and beyond.
Yeah. Well, one thing he might do if he wants to be a government in waiting, or at least one that the public will respect, is respond to my emails. Come and speak to me. Come and speak to us about Bill C-18. No excuse not to, really. But his communications director still hasn't responded to my email. Person whose job it is to communicate, but struggles to communicate.
Doug Ford comments after meeting with the Prime Minister Mark Carney. Ford was pushing for lower taxes, and Ford wants the Liberal government to lower taxes. And I'm going to bet dollars to donut that doesn't happen, because when they promised to lower the taxes, it turned out to be a lot less in their campaign than what they promised. They promised $868, $858 for a family, and it turned out to be more like $267 for the average family. A lot less. And then, you know, with declining revenues, capital fleeing, I just don't know where he's going to get lower taxes. They should lower the interest rate. That'd be a start. And Ford's calling for that.
Yeah, Ford is very vocal about that, isn't he? Yeah. But the thing is, I mean, we're in a situation where the lay of the land, fiscally speaking, in terms of the deficit and the debt that's accumulated, is a national tragedy. It's a catastrophe right now. No matter how sort of smooth and suave and qualified Mark Carney appears to be, the financial situation in Canada is a disaster. Just because it's worse in Britain and Greece or somewhere like that doesn't mean that it's not a catastrophe here in Canada. And in that context, cutting taxes is not something that bureaucrats like to do. You know, if anything, they're going to raise taxes.
Yeah, so what they are good at, though, the Liberals, is raising taxes. And here we have another Holiday Home Blacklock story. Tax filers face a $50 a day fines and mandatory oaths under threat of perjury for failing to cooperate with CRA. And that is from our friend Francois-Philippe Champagne. Outlined proposals Friday in his draft amendments to the Income Tax Act. And these proposed amendments are intended to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of tax audits and facilitate the collection of tax revenues on a timelier basis. So they're basically saying that a lot of people that try to stall and do different things, they're saying, well, you're going to get a $50 a day fine. Then new provisions will allow Revenue Canada agency to compel tax filers to swear an oath under threat of perjury when submitting information. Taxpayers who knowingly mislead auditors are already subject to 50% penalties for gross negligence.
Meanwhile, none of those standards apply to the government, which can delay the release of any information, can just brazenly lie or mislead and behave in a generally sort of dastardly fashion, and there are no consequences. So good for you, Champagne.
Where are the documents for the accusations or allegations against Stephen Guilbeault's companies for, I think, what was it, $250 million in this green slush fund? Have we got those documents yet?
I mean, there's a room full, an Indiana Jones style warehouse worth of documents that the Liberal government has blocked, and previous governments as well. They this is their bread and butter. It almost seems like they're spending most of their day thinking of ways to not reveal information, like how many people are coming into Canada, for example. Just very sort of obscure, abstract ideas like that, like how many immigrants are coming into Canada. They don't, or for example, a budget maybe. I mean, I know that's pretty fringe, isn't it, to want a budget? That's a pretty sort of weird thing to request, but they don't want to give you that. However, if you fail to reveal information about, some gas you bought in 2022 or something like that, then you're screwed.
Yeah, literally. Again, we need a Cash Patel maybe here in Canada that's found, like, I think the FBI located some documents that were in burn bags, but it says they were intentionally made to be found by somebody, though, so somebody put them where they could be found, but they were in burn bags. I'm sure that the Liberals have lots of bags here that are labeled burn.
Maybe metaphorically. But the thing is, again, we go back, don't we? We go back to trusting government. Why would anybody trust a government that behaves like this, with this kind of hypocrisy? I almost feel like you would be strange if you implicitly trusted this government. You know, that would make you weird.
Well, if you work for the government, there's an office party this Thursday that includes sexy drag rockstar pride potluck and drag bingo. Public service Pride Week party. Notice did not include the estimate to the cost of the taxpayer, but the department would not comment on the annual workforce demographics report. Do not detail how many employees self-identify as LGBTQ. Events were booked during business hours. Drag bingo featuring male performers dressed as women is scheduled for over 90 minutes on Thursday afternoon. Performers include a sexy drag rock star and roller skating disco diva. I thought disco was dead, but it sounds like disco is back for the government. And wasn't this same government that we talked about a while ago that for the adverse effects from the vaccine, we're too busy watching Netflix to respond to people's claims of adverse effects from the vaccine?
Yeah, it's a good laugh, isn't it? I think it's particularly appropriate that this is the Department of Immigration as well, which is such a controversial department that has pursued extraordinarily controversial policies particularly over the last 5 years, but you could say last 10 years. And here they are pursuing something else quite controversial. And it's that kind of marriage, isn't it, of mass immigration and this kind of revolutionary approach to culture. Very interesting.
How many other outlets other than Hollydone and Blacklocks do you think are going to pick this story up here?
I'm sure CTV will do a celebratory video on it where they just have a laugh and they say, "How fun is this, employee?"
We got another one here from Hollydone. Climate change is causing ecological grief in First Nations. Feds say more funds are required. More funds are required for climate counseling under the wellness program already budgeted at $1.6 billion. More funds required.
Is the word colonial used in this article? That's what I want to know.
Climate change is disrupting important and distinct pathways for good health and well-being among First Nations and Inuit in complex ways, said a department report. Impacts included limited ability to hunt, fish, trap, forage, and spend time on land, which is a critical pathway for mental health and well-being, and damage to the land through extreme climate events such as wildfires, which can create perpetual experiences of stress and ecological grief, the report said.
I mean, it's a little bit ironic, isn't it? Because, dollars even, literally the Canadian dollar as physically and metaphorically sort of possessed is a consequence of the Industrial Revolution, which is what most people blame for climate change. But for some reason, we only ever focus on the negatives. It's a strange situation where it's almost like when people attack like the British, for example, and they say, "Oh, you've been polluting since 1825 or something like that." And then I feel like the response should be, yeah, and you drive cars because of that, because of the British, because the British polluted. You now have antibiotics and all the sort of wonders of modern technology. But for some reason, it's only ever the bad. So the climate's changed. It's probably Canada's fault or something like that. Therefore, give us billions of dollars for counselling. Just seems a little peculiar. It seems like it's not a very good attempt to weigh the pros and cons of the Industrial Revolution, let's say.
Minister Joel Lightbound, I kind of like Joel Lightbound, he's a smarter guy, won't comment on the abrupt cancellation of public input into the proposed Canada Post service cuts. Department has discussed elimination of daily mail delivery. That'll save about $70 million a year. I think they need to save a lot more than that, though. Lightbound's office would not reply to numerous requests regarding an abrupt end to public consultations regarding Canada Post Service. His department earlier said input was mandatory, so don't feel bad. Nobody responds, it seems like. Why should you respond, right? Apparently.
We should or maybe Holly Dawn should start fining them $50 a day until they respond.
Canada Post, in the most recent corporate plan tabled in Parliament, predicted ongoing pre-tax losses of, ready for this, $1 billion a year.
Wow.
There you go. So pre-tax losses after federal loans were forecasted $962 million in 2026, followed by $1.1 billion in 2027, rising to $1.2 billion in 28, $1.3 billion in 29. Small potatoes, compared to what CBC gets there, doling out the raises. And then you put this in here, and you're going to have to explain it to me because it's not English to me, but what are skibbity?
I mean, I think that's skibbity is a word that is like most strongly associated with Zoomers, the generation that has just always been on the internet since they were in diapers. And appropriately, it doesn't mean anything. It's a completely meaningless word. It's a gibberish term.
And
Like
Delulu?
something that
Does that mean when you stop buying Lululemon, Delulu, or what's that?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything. But trad wife means a traditional wife, like
Trad wife?
Childbearing wife or something like that. But it's just, this is interesting because they've been added to the Cambridge Dictionary, which is quite a sort of stuffy institution. But
try it out tonight.
They're starting to acknowledge these words from the internet.
When the wife comes home, why don't you call her a trad wife? Just call her that a few times and see how red your cheeks turn.
Which cheeks?
I'm not going to go there. And then a recovering American discusses the difficulties of moving to Canada. CBC interviewed some Americans that moved to Canada because of the election of Trump. The interviewees, including one who brands herself as a recovering American, highlight the difficulties of getting into Canada, with one immigration lawyer emphasizing it's not the Vietnam War anymore. We're no longer welcome draft dodgers.
Yeah, most of this article is just them complaining how hard it is to get into Canada. And that guy, that recovering American, is saying that he can't buy a house. Or he can, but he would be penalized like 25% or something for the foreign ownership rules. And I think they kind of just feel that it should be easier to get in. No surprises that an immigration lawyer would be saying that. But
he doesn't know the secrets. He doesn't know the secrets. You just have to claim a couple of things. One, I think if you claim refugee status, one or LGBTQ, I think those are the paths to a better or a faster way in.
And burn your passport. That's the other thing. Burn all your previous documents so that you render yourself stateless. And then say that you'd be persecuted. Yeah. I mean, some people in England. Sorry, I have to say it because it's so hilarious. Some people in England have joined terrorist organizations and gone and protested outside of the embassy of, I don't know, Saudi Arabia or something like that, and taken photographs of it, and then gone to the Home Office in England and said, "Look, I'm a member of this organization that my country considers to be a terrorist organization, and look at this protest I did. I definitely can't go back now." And then the judges in England are so stupid that they say, "Yeah, all right, checkmate, you stay." I mean, that's England, obviously, but the same kind of scam is being pulled here because it's so easy to manipulate, particularly stupid judges. Very, very easy to get what you want from them.
And this, we've seen this over and over on the polls that are coming out. And this is a National Post opinion piece. First reading, everything except Mark Carney's approval rating is getting worse in Canada. I mean, capital flight is increasing, hollow job market, houses get more expensive. Everything seems to be, all the economic indicators seem to be pointing to a really bad, you can change that slide, really bad economic conditions in Canada. Yet, according to the polls, Carney's approval rating is as good or better than it has been in a while.
I mean, I would say partly that's because Parliament is not in session, which is great news for the incumbent, isn't it? Because then they don't have to be scrutinised. They don't have to lose votes or struggle to get votes passed or whatever. They love that. They love it when they don't have to work in Parliament. Plus, Pierre Poilievre has been effectively on a sabbatical, hasn't he? He's not really been there. And the whole Conservative Party hasn't been there. Because the Conservative Party is Pierre Poilievre. It's a one-man band, as much as he likes to pretend that his other MPs and shadow ministers are important. They're not important. He's the only one that matters. He's the only one that anybody's ever heard of. and he's been quiet, and he's had other fish to fry, and he's looked pretty sort of weak anyway because he lost his seat. So it's all been aligning for Carney, plus the hatred of Trump and this kind of patriotic reaction that the Liberals have tried to provoke. It's all worked out pretty well, hasn't it? Not bad for somebody that said, I'm not a politician. I mean, he's looking like a pretty damn good politician, isn't he?
Dan McTeague put this out, but this is the United Conservative Party is the ruling party in Alberta, and they just passed Resolution 12, which redefines carbon dioxide as a foundational nutrient for all life on Earth and removes its designation as a pollutant. Uh-oh. That's going to drive the climate religion absolutely bonkers.
It is a peculiar one, that, isn't it? But
how dare trees eat carbon dioxide?
They eat this poison.
So
it's quite a silly one, isn't it? Because it's quite an abstract argument to push, isn't it? Because you're talking about ratio. That's what it's about, isn't it? The ratio of carbon dioxide to other elements in the atmosphere. It is quite an abstract point to make, and I suppose the people in the UCP have seen the loophole there, and they've just said, okay, let's have a bit of that.
I had a bit of I don't know, an epiphany or whatever, and this is probably going to excite some people, that with what's going on in the world, like, China, India, United States, some of the biggest economies in the world, aren't doing anything to modify their economic output with climate change directives. It's only really Canada's, they claim, Carney says they're going to be the leader in the world for climate change and all that stuff. Yeah, well, I mean, nobody else is participating. It's easy to become a leader in that area. I think it's more.
But yeah.
Well, they're backing off though too. I mean, they just did that big order for LNG, and it's more of a dog whistle right now for the base that is very much will start screaming and shrieking about it, right? Like, because I mean, Canada's, you've said it a million times, Canada's actual. Even if we sacrificed everything, like you said, just turned all the lights off and just covered ourselves up in a hole and did nothing, it would change the world by almost nothing.
It certainly wouldn't change the global temperature, which is what matters. Although, the composition of... In fact, if we did nothing, it would probably make it worse because the fires would be worse, and that's our main contributor, isn't it? So yeah. It's obviously quite foolish, isn't it? And that's what I meant as well about... the Chinese and the Indians, the sort of great polluters of the planet, what they often say is, look, you started this, you Westerners, like the British, basically, you started all this pollution, and, we just had to innocently catch up and increase our living standards. But there's no acknowledgement of the perks. Like modern India, modern China, absolutely impossible to even imagine those countries without the Industrial Revolution, without the British. And yet these countries then come and say, oh, but you polluted in the 19th century. It's quite absurd. And then Canada is almost like roped into that, isn't it? Because it's kind of part of the like Anglophone world and of the West. But it's extraordinary to see. And I think you referred to it as a dog whistle. I think that's not a bad shout, actually, because it's almost like a religious term, isn't it? A religious signaling, almost. It's like the people that put the fish on their cars to show that they're Christians. It's a bit like that, isn't it? To say it's kind of...
Well, look at...
to signal that this idea that they hate capitalism almost, so that they are degrowth, and that they believe in some kind of pagan sort of Celtic religion or something where you go and worship trees. But it's all about... They associate capitalism and industry with negativity. They look at that as bad, and they look at everything that they hate, like racism and colonialism and all the rest of it, as downstream from industrialization. So I feel like they put it all in a basket, a lot of these extremists, and they just say, burn all that. We just hate all of that.
Well, if we look at some of the cardinals and bishops of the climate religion, if we look at Justin Trudeau as one of the cardinals, and I think Cardinal, I'm not sure how the hierarchy works, Cardinal Trudeau there, he's now traipsing all over the world, visit with his kids. He's in the Swiss Alps, and I can't remember, he's just all over the place and doesn't seem to be worried about climate change while he goes and explores the world with his children. And then Mark Miller, I mean, he didn't even want you to drive across Canada for a vacation. Now is heading up, I think, the CNE, where he's inviting people from all across Canada to come to the CNE. So, these cardinals and bishops of climate change have seemed to have a different tact when it also, doesn't suit their political needs.
Well, this is central to the whole thing, isn't it? It's their obvious hypocrisy. They're quite transparent, and they don't even try and hide it, do they? A lot of these sort of fanatics, particularly the celebrities, they don't even try and hide it.
Yeah.
They basically just say, "Oh yeah, I do fly in private jets like every other day," while also lecturing peasants to not have like hamburgers or something like that. They do acknowledge that, but it's kind of it doesn't seem to affect them, because I don't think hypocrisy is a negative in this religion. I actually think it's necessary. You have to be a hypocrite to be a proper votary of this religion.
And then this one here, this is a Canadian press story. The lady that wrote this, Holly Doan, said actually the same lady that wrote the attack article on her passport protected area. And, she interviewed because the U.S. State Department is taking aim at Canada's Online News Act and also the Human Rights Report that criticizes press freedom in Canada, which characterized Thursday as Orwellian. And then she went out and interviewed an expert. Where do you think she found the expert to support the Online News Act?
Asleep in a pile of dust in an obscure university's back room, I would say.
Bingo. Look at that. Ding, 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 ding. Give the guy a medal. She went out and found an expert in media that is a professor at a university. I would say that word expert, I actually tweeted back to her and I listed all the stories that we've done. I think like 20. I just flooded her tweet with that. And I said, more than willing to do an interview as an expert in one of the suffering news outlets in Canada because of Bill C-18. You interview a academic that lives off of Bill C-18, but you don't interview the people that are directly affected by it.
I mean, this is a thoroughly garbage article. This is one of the most appalling articles I've ever read. And I mean, I must have read more than 1 million news articles at this point in my sad life. This is, I mean, not in terms of it being illiterate or anything like that, just in terms of how dishonest it is and how transparently this violates every basic principle of journalism. This is an absolute disgrace to the Canadian press. And I can't believe that this article got through the editors. They actually interviewed 2 professors, both of whom make the same stupid comment, the exact same stupid comment about how it's Orwellian. Professors who haven't read George Orwell. What the hell? If you're if you consider yourself an intelligent or an educated person, you must read George Orwell. And if you haven't read George Orwell, resign, I would say. And these 2 people show evidence of having not read George Orwell, and yet they both say this is like George Orwell. I mean, so not only are they biased, quite obviously so, they're also not educated or informed. These are stupid people. So 2 stupid people who are biased have been interviewed about an article that doesn't go beyond that. I mean, there's a section at the bottom of this article where a UBC professor is interviewed. And he says, I was particularly upset to see that the US State Department has highlighted how they have certain schemes, the federal government has certain schemes to privilege people based on the color of their skin, their ethnic background. Usually a rational person might think that's a bit weird to privilege somebody based on their sexuality or their skin color or, the status of their body. That is very, very strange behavior, I would have thought. And yet this professor says, because the State Department has done this, it's really startling to see that. And he describes it as putting a MAGA lens on press freedom in Canada. These people are so extreme. These are such fringe individuals. And they've been interviewed as if they're it's like interviewing Gandalf to discuss the Shire or the Ring. It's like, so what do you think, Gandalf, you wise wizard that knows everything? These people don't know anything, never mind everything. These people are completely clueless. And then this journalist does not mention any of the negative consequences of the Online News Act. Not a single one. I mean,
she didn't interview.
I want to get off my soapbox here because I know I've been ranting, but this article is a disgrace, and I would encourage people to read it. If you wonder why so many people think Canadian journalism is trash, have a read of this from Canada's only news agency, premier news agency. Just have a look at it.
You can go find this author, and then you can go find her tweet there, and you can see all my responses to her. I also sent a letter to Canadian Press and said, you know, like, and outlining all the stories that we've done, and maybe she should talk to one of the 100 outlets, close to 100 outlets that have failed in Canada since Bill C-18 has been introduced, or talk to one of the 4,800 CTV journalists that have been laid off that was cited because of Bill C-18, or talk to Kamloops this week that closed and cited in their press release that Bill C-18 killed them, or talk to us. We're more than willing to talk. Instead, they talk to two academics that have nothing to do with media. They don't have to do the daily struggles of media, do they? They live off the government as well. That's
yeah, and one of them here,
and
again, the UBC professor says it looks at things, i.e. the Online News Act, that are actually promoting press freedom, but presents them in a way as if they're curtailing press freedom. Does the Online News Act promote press freedom? I mean, this man, I think it's a man, Alfred, yeah, evidently knows nothing, not less than nothing. This person should have never opened his mouth on this subject because he's a fool. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't even know what Orwellian means, hasn't even read George Orwell. The man is a complete fool. And yet there he is now, like I said, the Gandalf of this subject. And people who are coming into this who are ill-informed, like average civilians, they're going to read this and they're going to say, bloody hell, US State Department, they're crazy, aren't they? They're stupid. This Online News Act is a great idea. Even Mark Carney doesn't seem to like the Online News Act. But there you go. Anyway, they also mentioned that, by the way, they also mentioned Prime Minister Mark Carney indicated last week he's open to repealing the legislation. Not quite, but why did he indicate that? Because we asked him. Kelowna now asked him, because you never do.
And then, you know, in the first line there, they'd use the term experts. When you see the word experts anymore in the media, you should run. Because, you know, like, these are not experts. These are far from experts. And like I said, why wouldn't they come and interview people in the media that are being crippled and devastated by this thing? And, you know, it turns out she doesn't disclose this as well. She's also teaches at a university, as well as reporting for CP. Teaches journalism.
That makes sense, really. Yeah. Teaches journalism, and also doesn't know what the word Orwellian means. So that's 3 people in universities that don't know the first thing about either journalism or George Orwell, and yet present themselves as experts. Take off your wizard's robes. You're not a wizard. You need to earn that wizard status.
The big meeting is happening. So the European leaders that were invited to the meeting with Zelensky there after the meeting in Alaska with, I'm sure you saw some of the clips from that, in the meeting in Alaska with President Putin and President Trump. And as they were walking down the carpet, everybody's like, oh my God, it's a red carpet. As they were walking down the carpet, Trump flexed by flying a B-2 bomber overhead with flanked by some F-35s. F-35s that we're still in the process of buying, that we've had on order forever.
A bit cheap and vulgar to do that. I mean, Russia's military is a joke. Russia's military is like, it can't even capture Kharkov. Look on a map.
But I mean,
look on a map at where Kharkov is next to the Russian border. They can't even capture that city. The Russian military is a joke. There's no need to like rub it in and say, like, look how strong we are. The Russian military is trash.
They also had on the tarmac flanked with a bunch of fighter jets as well. Again, Canada couldn't put anything on there. But missing in this list there, I'm sure that sting when they asked that question why he wasn't, you know, like there with Zelensky, really, because Zelensky, your friend Ursula there, right? And Italy's Prime Minister Macron, and then the head of NATO, and then your other friend there, Keir Starmer there. We got a little and Ruth, yeah. And then here's a little clip with Zelensky there meeting with Ursula here. Just a small clip here. It's the wrong link. Okay, we don't have that link there. But here do we have the link of Keir there? Flying over. Keir doesn't have the Donald Trump cheeseburger there awaiting him like on his flight there. You know, like Donald Trump has a bigger table on Air Force One with all the Big Mac stuff going on. You got this clip?
Ukraine's been going on a really long time now. I mean, 3+ years. Hugely impacted the Ukrainians who've suffered hugely, but it's also impacted Europe. It's impacted every single family and community in the United Kingdom. And so everybody wants it to end, not least the Ukrainians. But we've got to get this right. We've got to make sure there is peace, that it is lasting peace, and that it is fair and that it is just. And that's why I'm travelling to Washington with other European leaders to discuss this face to face with President Trump and President Zelensky, because it's in everyone's interests, it's in the UK's interests that we get this right. This more.
You'd think that, you know, knowing a little bit about secrecy of documents, that old Keir there would have folded up the binder then, instead of having them have to like fuzz it out there, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's quite. That is. I mean, I wouldn't say that's necessarily his fault. That's the fault of his PR people. They should know that kind of thing. I mean, he'll be angry with them, I'm sure.
Yeah, because those are his briefing documents there that he's reading, so he can get up to speed when he lands there. And then we have.
But look at that. Look at what he's talking about. He has just taken instructions from Donald Trump, who's completely flipped this conflict on its head, and he's now made people like the British Prime Minister talk about peace as being a priority. And then if you look at Mark Carney's statement that he released, the first sentence, the very first thing he says is, Donald Trump's leadership has enabled us to, you know, potentially win peace or something like that. They're all just completely dancing to Donald Trump's jig. And I just think it's, you know, if these people had any self-respect, they would be ashamed of themselves, but evidently they're not. And I would also just like to highlight, again, we've said it a number of times, Donald Trump is funny. Whatever you think about Donald Trump, I don't particularly like the chap, quite the contrary. But whatever you think of him, he's hilarious. He is a really funny dude. And how funny is it? And how subtle and, you know, what a good troll is it that he said that Keir Starmer has, on more than one occasion, said Keir Starmer has such a beautiful voice. He said that about, what, 3 or 4 times now? Listen to Keir Starmer. He's like, well, today we're going to... Who would possibly think that's a beautiful voice? Obviously trolling the British Prime Minister live on air. And you've got to laugh. You just have to laugh.
And here's Zelensky coming off his plane there. Just a shot of Zelensky in his regular garb there, of course, you know, keeping the thing going with his thing. And then this is Mark Carney's itinerary for the day. Not on the list is an invite to the White House, though. There you go. I mean, this is the itinerary for what's happening at the White House. And Mark Carney, not part of that. I mean, that's got a sting.
Well, it suggests, obviously, that it's part of the ongoing trade discussions, isn't it? And this is yet another kind of indication that the Americans are playing hardball, and the relationship maybe is not very good right now.
I thought we had this, but we don't. But the Cambodian monks are actually... You do have it? Okay, let's play it. I thought we didn't have it. So there's a little, again, calling for the Nobel Peace Prize for Trump.
Dear Mr. President Trump, we are standing here today with hearts full of appreciations for your instrumental role in bringing about the recent ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand. The border conflict, which had escalated...
You can go find that on the internet if you want, but they're just basically calling for the Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize for Trump. No different than the people from the Congo. And who was that war again with? Congo and...
Rwanda.
Rwanda, and they called for it as well. And then, you know, there's a couple other... I think they count as like 7 conflicts ended, and this is the... Today is the big one that he's trying to put an end to. Well over 1 million lives lost so far in this
He's
conflict.
getting quite a lot of praise, isn't he? He's certainly getting his fingers into all of the conflicts. Like the other one is Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Yeah, those conflicts have been going on for years. I think the Congo one, 30 years. And I think the Azerbaijani one was forever too. And then all of a sudden he just says he works a trade deal, and they come in and they're shaking hands. They're not even just like ceasefires, they're peace deals. And that's what he says he wants today. He wants a peace deal, not a ceasefire. I mean, most people are calling for ceasefire. Ceasefires typically don't work, right? They usually end up into a mess. And we see that same thing going on in Gaza right now. The ceasefires don't seem to have as much teeth, for sure.
I would say wait and see on this. Another one is India and Pakistan. Remember that? When we all thought we were going to have a nuclear war, didn't we? Not so long ago, a few months ago. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, there's an idea that he's helping and that there's peace. I don't think that the problem has been solved, or the problems have been solved between India and Pakistan. I don't think that's going to be true in the Congo. The Congo has been a basket case, as you said, for decades now. But I don't know. It's better than nothing, isn't it? So, but like the idea that he's just waved his wand and solved these intractable conflicts, I don't think so. But at least it's a sign of progress, definitely.
And then this one here, I put it in here because this has been all over the internet. It's horrific if you go watch it. I didn't put it in because I didn't want to watch it again. But and we see this problem here in Canada as well with untrained truck drivers. And we saw the little the segment there. I think CTV did it, or where they went behind the scenes in the scene. They were doling out licenses basically for cash money. And this truck driver does an illegal turn on a turnpike, and it killed 3 people. And it turns out this person was an illegal alien that got his license in California. So
Harjinder Singh seems to be his name. 3 counts of vehicular homicide. Sad.
Tragic. The car went underneath the trailer, basically decapitating the people.
Those trucks. I mean, I've felt like, particularly in BC, I must say, the very fact that families have to share the roads in the mountains and stuff with these trucks, it just seems crazy. I almost feel like if we figure that out, if in some way that we can figure out a new transport system, I have a feeling that we'll look back and say, did people honestly used to drive on Highway 1 in BC with these trucks? It's crazy.
I have a solution for that, and I've had this solution forever. So make the roadways trucks only between like midnight and like 6 a.m. and then only trucks travel. And then because they got to rest as well. So then because it is so many in British Columbia, so many of the accidents and deaths occur because of transport trucks. Not saying it's their fault, but I mean it's because it's the size of the mass of the vehicle when it's hitting something that has a mass that is like 1/30th or 1/50th of the mass of the other thing, right? Because it's just basically mass.
Yeah. Totally. And if you're going to be hit from behind, like if there's a pileup, how many times have you seen a video where a truck comes and they just can't brake and they're coming into the back of a pileup?
It's basic physics, right? It's just basic physics. And this is the Conservative Party put this out, and actually we got an interview on it. And this private property rights, that ruling by a judge here in BC, giving rights to the Cowichan tribe over the properties there in Richmond, and then we got a picture of the area that's involved in this, and this has not made anybody happy, because not only is the ruling given to the Cowichan tribe, but there's several other tribes that are claiming that land as well. But what this interview I did with Jeff Moyse, who has practiced Aboriginal law and public law for 31 years, says that the government, well, let's play the clip and then we'll talk about it. Do you have that from 2339? Okay, so anyway, so I interviewed Jeff there, and he says the government, he's going to get that clip as we're talking, the government did not choose to use extinguishment on private lands, and that was an ideological choice, and he worked for the government, and they told the lawyers, do not argue that, and that's both the NDP and the Liberal governments have told that to their legal counsel. So,
I mean, could there be a more serious subject or discussion to have in Canada? Like, full stop. This should be top of the list. This should be what Mark Carney's working on now, because you can't. Canada is not possible if this is going to be the rule, the law of the land.
Let's go play this clip here. So the BC NDP have now appealed this decision. What do you think the difference is? Like you said, it's not really had anything to do with the NDP at this point. What is the difference between how they appeal that versus like a Conservative Party appealing it? Or what do you think the differences would be there?
There's one major difference that I would focus on. In 2021, or 2022, I guess it was, April 2022, the BC government the Attorney General issued a directive to his litigators in legal services branch that they would no longer do certain things in litigation. They would no longer plead certain defenses on behalf of the Crown. One of those was they will not plead extinguishment of Aboriginal rights or title in any circumstances. So the BC government finds itself in an awkward position because it's done this Richmond case tying its hands behind its back in terms of litigation. It's basically gone in and said, well, there's an argument to be made that this title was extinguished by these fee simple interests. It's an argument that has to go to the Supreme Court of Canada. But guess what? We're not going to make it. We're going to leave it aside in this litigation. That was, I think, a political decision, and I think a huge mistake. And I will say Canada did exactly the same thing.
They can stop. So that's why you got to go watch the interview. It's about 30 some odd minutes, and it's very, very good. There's a lot in there that you need to kind of to watch and understand. We did reach out to Nikki Sharma for the BC NDP and asked why they didn't argue extinguishment, and we didn't get much of an answer here. The ruling could have significant unintended consequences for a fee simple private property rights in BC that must be recognized by a higher court. We believe it must be considered on appeal. And we also reached out to the federal Liberals and asked that question too. And somehow it's covered under Transport Canada. So that's under Chrystia Freeland's ministry, which is odd. The government of Canada, here's their response to it. The government of Canada continues to support and encourage reconciliation as a concrete step forward toward advancing meaningful relationship between governments and First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. That's the statement they gave it. Transport Canada is reviewing the decision closely to assess implications and determine how to best move forward. As this work is ongoing, Transport Canada is not in position to comment further. So, I mean, we both got from both Nikki Sharma from the BC Attorney General and Deputy Premier, so Nikki Sharma, and from Transport Canada, we got a bunch of, we're watching it. But, you know, if you go watch the interview with Jeff Moyes, they decided not to use what he thinks is the only credible defense for private property owners. Is extinguishment on private land, and they're not using it. Willfully not using it, that defense.
Because it violates their basic beliefs, doesn't it? The basic ideology that has predominated in this country for 50 years or something like that. But that's the thing. It's going to need bravery. It's going to need somebody who is very bold and very brave to come out and say, look, we cannot have a country if we go down this path. We can't do it. And Canada at the minute, every country in the world has a similar story. People have this ridiculous notion that it's unique to the US and Canada and Australia and places like that, what they call settler colonial societies. It's not unique to those societies. This is the story of every country in the world. And Canada, as well as those countries, just needs to figure something out. We need to figure out a way to say, this is a country, it's called Canada. There's one law for everybody. Let's march on.
So this property is about 780 acres along Number 6 Road, and it includes private property, some Crown land, and some land owned by the city of Richmond. It also includes a bunch of high-end private homes, a golf course, a Walmart, and a Wayfair depot. And basically what he said right now, there's a cloud over those lands. So basically it'll be really hard to sell that land because, I mean, you're selling land that you may or may not have title to. And you know, who would lend money on those lands at this point? Do you know what I mean? Like if you say
David Eby said exactly that. That's what David Eby said. Yeah, he said our whole financial system is based on property rights, which is true. It's not just financial system. It's the whole civilization. You might as well use that grand term. It's all based on that. And yeah, for a province like BC, which is already struggling to attract investment for various reasons, most of them related to like bureaucracy basically and laws, it's terrible timing, isn't it? It's bad news. And
regular viewer there, Ian Leslie, he's wrote that you know, UNDRIP's in there too, but yeah, Jeff addresses that as well. So you got to go watch that interview. It's a must watch just to get a good understanding. Harman Bangu there, all putting out this tweet here saying fentanyl super labs being uncovered in BC, and we've heard this we've done many stories on this too, and we talked about it many times, about these labs and how Mexico and China are using Canada as the new place for fentanyl super labs.
Another bad news story for BC, isn't it? I mean,
And
Somebody's
then
going to have to go out there and fix this reputational problem that BC is suffering from.
And then this nurse that was got, I think she had a 1 month suspension, and she was fined $94,000 for her comments about the transgender community. So, and I've done many interviews with John Carpe from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, including I think we're going to have somebody, I think, this week as well. We're going to talk about the fines being doled out to Jeff Evely. We did speak with Jeff Evely last week, I believe. We did the interview with Jeff, and we're going to speak to somebody, and we'll ask this question too, because the case of Amy Ham, BC nurse facing nearly $95,000 fines for her social media comments on transgender ideology, has struck a chord with Canadians. Our announcement on Friday went viral, reaching more than 800,000 views in just days. Here's a small sample of the widespread media coverage the case has garnered. So yeah, so when we have one of the Justice Center lawyers on, we will ask that question along with the defense for Jeff Evely and his $25,000 fine, plus I think there were some victim fees in there. So his fine for walking in the
victim surcharge
is $28,000 and some change.
I would say though, this Amy Ham woman, she's quite famous, isn't she? She featured in a documentary that the Telegraph did, I think, of London in the UK. That was that documentary that focused on Vancouver particularly, and it was kind of like how Canada's gone down it become a sort of dystopia or something like that. I don't know if you can remember that one, but they interviewed her for that. So I mean, it's again talking about BC's reputation. But something I would say, if you're interested, go on to the nurses disciplinary, the disciplinary section of the nurses union website, or the nurses college, sorry, and just have a look at some of the things that they get up to, some of these nurses, where they punch patients or they steal drugs for their use or to sell them illegally, where they do extraordinarily stupid things, and it ends up with people dying in their care. And then look at the punishment. It's like, has been suspended for 1 week and must go on a course to learn about boundaries or something like that. Whereas this woman has made a comment that is not appreciated by the cultural elite in Canada, and now her life is over, basically, or they're trying to make that happen.
Yeah, it's no different than the King Arthur days, putting heads on sticks out at the front gate.
Well, it's no different. It's like, this is a political opponent, basically. She's been persecuted because she's a political opponent of the prevailing ideology of the elite, rather than somebody who's merely killed a patient or something like that. That's okay. We'll deal with that. But this is a political challenge. This is like a pretender to the throne almost. You can't tolerate that in your kingdom.
So this tweet here by Dan Elvis retweeting Andrew Coyne, the mystery of BC's darkening debt outlook is getting more and more bleak. I do have an interview granted now with the finance minister, Brenda Bailey, supposedly on September 15th or 16th, when they dropped their first quarter outlook. So that's coming. So we got a 30-minute interview they promised. So they've said that several times. So we'll
try to wriggle out of it, didn't they? One may say, one might opine, but I don't know. She is a busy woman, in fairness. She is basically the number 2, isn't she, in the government? So
we had some really good interviews last week as well. Again, the Jeff Moyse, the lawyer, really good interview. If you go on Kelowna Now, you can find these interviews, or on Now Media on our YouTube. You can find that. That's our show for today. We're trying to keep it under an hour. And we're not doing the rest of the stuff that we typically do right now. We're going to do those as weekly shows, the markets, tech, health, all that kind of stuff. We'll do those as weekly shows. And then we're just going to maybe do the Are You Serious section every now and then as well. So hopefully, if you got any feedback, thoughts on that, we'd appreciate if you would share that. And this is how we keep changing and trying to get better and better, right? And someone says, don't refer to CBC as the media. Well, I mean, it's just like I said, if you see experts in the title put out by mainstream media, don't read that story, because what experts? People should be scared of that word experts by now. Because if you want an expert,
when I write the stories and it includes a professor or something, I use the term academic. That's the best. I think that's the best way to do it. Or just professor, because people know what that means. Whereas expert sounds like, oh gee, you know, he's been doing this for 60 years and knows it inside out. Not necessarily. Often they're assistant professors anyway. They're hardly experts.
And we resisted in this Jeff Moyse interview, and you would classify him as an expert for sure. 31 years practicing with the government, and then 33 years practicing Aboriginal law. And
an expert that CP might have interviewed is Michael Geist, who we interviewed, who is recognized as basically the foremost authority on digital law in Canada.
Yeah.
And obviously, why was he not interviewed? Because he has the exact opposite opinion, and they didn't want that.
He fights the narrative that they run at the time, because anytime that reporter there was looking for a story to channel the people with TDS. Andrew Coyne has TDS for sure. He's absolutely gone like bonkers on that. I don't think he even reports on Canada. He just reports on he must spend his whole day tweeting anti-sentiment against Trump. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you're back tomorrow, and spread the word for us. Like, subscribe, do all those things, share, comment, and hit the like button. You know, share everything, and we would appreciate that so we can grow this audience, right? And there you go. That's it. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching Now Media.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no...